Hi, everyone, and welcome to our annual Giving Tuesday event. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to our team. Next to me, I have Stephanie Byerly, our Executive Director. Hello. And we also have Lauren Hatch, our social media content creator and technological guru.
Oh.
Lauren, I don't see you. Okay.
Yeah.
And we have Jill Rice, our executive coordinator. And today, Carly Stockton, who's our administrative manager, is unfortunately ill and unable to attend. So I'd like to start by saying a special thank you to City National Bank for sponsoring our event this year. And for the past few years, actually, by making a corporate donation to cover men's costs. Their contribution means that 100% of every dollar donated goes directly to fulfilling men's mission to educate, equip, and restore all who are impacted by psychological abuse. I'd also like to send out a huge thank you to the Carol and James Collins Foundation and Dev2 Support Foundation for supplying men with significant grant funds to support the work that we do. And to all of you and our friends and donors, we are humbled by and grateful for the many ways you contribute to MEND. Today, you're going to hear from each of our team members, and we want to give you a little insight as to what it's like to work at MEND. And also you're going to hear from a victim survivor named Sandy, who's going to tell you, give you basically a testimonial about her experience with MEND. And we'll hear from another person as well. And so I just want you to know what you can expect. But first, I just want to express on behalf of our entire team how truly grateful we are for your support and for the wonderful year that we've had. There are many ways that you can partner with us. You can get trained, educated, and if you're a victim survivor, step into your healing journey with us. You can refer others to MEND, individuals or organizations who need training. And by forwarding our materials to others in need, you're actually helping them identify what they're experiencing because psychological abuse is so confusing that our tools really help unlock that for them. You can repost our social media posts or share our blogs, which continuously translates into an increase in the number of people that we are able to serve. Our growth is largely word of mouth. And so, and we've grown so much and we're thankful for all of you for helping us accomplish that. By making a donation, you can also help us or encouraging others to become financial partners, either a small monthly donation or a large donation annually. It all is something that we greatly appreciate. With you on our team, we are able to make a strong impact. What do I mean by that? In the past year alone, we have reached over 33,000 people combined through various training and educational platforms. Approximately 11,000 people visit our website each month to access our valuable tools, resources, and information hosted there. Almost 9,000 of those monthly viewers, and let me explain a little bit, they're newcomers. And we are able to track that they stay on our website and really use all of the resources available to them. They're not just people who are clicking on and clicking off. Thanks to your partnership, we're able to host various training platforms to support victims and responders in different stages of healing or in different stages of understanding of the confusing nature of psychological abuse. Our free training intensives that we do once a month and instructive videos, and our comprehensive curriculum for survivors or responders, and even our continuing education unit courses for therapists, our blogs, podcasts, and so much more help expand our reach and serve so many. You have enabled our team to wrap arms around the most needy and connect them to valuable resources to enhance their healing journey. For example, we receive many emails for additional assistance through our info account. Victim survivors who come to our website and attend our training are often for the first time able to unpack their prolonged confusion, sometimes for many years or even decades in a complicated and painful relationship, not understanding the cause of the toxicity. Covert emotional abuse or psychological abuse employs hidden manipulative tactics that are hard to identify, which then makes them really hard to describe. So victims have a hard time advocating for themselves with their therapist or with a faith-based leader or just with friends and family. And also, because they have a hard time and because society isn't really educated on domestic violence, many victims and survivors, when they do choose to speak out and reach out for help, experience what we call double abuse. And double abuse is when they're not believed or they're given incorrect instructions or criticisms and judgments, and sometimes even blaming them for the abuse. And when victims don't comply with these suggestions, these incorrect suggestions, often people pull away and they disconnect from the victim, they abandon them, and they sometimes even ostracize them because of the choices that they need to make. So the MEND Project works really hard to train responders, those people on the front lines, to learn how to respond in a trauma-informed way and not cause double abuse. And because of you, we are growing, like I said. We want to continue this growth with you, and we hope you'll consider becoming a monthly supporter or renewing your annual donation. Right now, we're excited for you to hear from our friend, Sandy. Sandy was referred to MEND's website by a friend of hers. After reviewing our materials, she received greater healing and clarity. Clarity is what combats confusion. She later attended a survivor training with our team, and we continued to walk alongside Sandy. Now she is an esthetician who encounters many people through her line of work, and many of her clients confide in her. Equipped with her experience and helpful tools, she now helps many other survivors by using the same MEND resources that helped her. Let's look at Sandy's video.
Well, I became a Christian when I was 18 years old in 1981, and I went to a church that decided to have a non-accredited Bible school. So after only a year and a half of college, I quit college and went to the Bible school. And as part of the training, they encouraged us to go out and get training at another church or another experience. And that's where I met my ex-husband. He was put in charge of my week in that time that I was spent there. So that's where that introduction and relationship began. He was a pastor. So about a year later, I moved to the state he was living in, and we got married. And I became a pastor's wife at age 21. And a brand new Christian, didn't really know what any of it was supposed to look like or what I was supposed to do. It was after we got home from our honeymoon, about 2 days later, that I had asked him a question in our apartment, and he turned with this steely look on his face, and his answer was so cruel and hateful. And I remember walking into the other room and thinking, that man hates me. And I didn't know what to think of that. So I internalized that. There must be something wrong with me. I must be failing in some way. I must not be pretty enough or thin enough or gifted enough. And so that began that journey of me trying to correct myself all the time for his disappointment in me. So it wasn't until after I was set free from the marriage and on my own and on my journey of healing that I even knew terms and definitions of what I had been through. In our dating relationship, the love bombing that I experienced, and in our early marriage, the trauma bonding, and how confusing and stripping that is to go through. And it just kept me off kilter. It kept me uncertain of myself, uncertain of our relationship, uncertain of what my expectations should be, what expectations were on me. I felt most of the time that if there was any kind of issue in the ministry, in our relationship, in our home, it was because I was doing something wrong. I wasn't good enough. And it was dehumanizing. And not safe to feel that way. And the shame that I took on with that caused me to be further isolated. I was part of a community that expectations were, marriage was above everything. You know, it wasn't the people in the relationship that were important. It was that marriage was important to God, and therefore, at all costs, you stay in your marriage. There would not have been a thought in my mind to leave, to bring up. We were under this, we're not allowed to bring up the D word, and that was actually how it was phrased. We will never say the D word to each other. And so it wasn't a thought on my mind. So when I moved back home and started my healing journey, I was opening up to a lot of people. I felt for myself, speaking about it made it real, and talking out loud about it. But I was told by many people that were in my culture, let it go. You shouldn't be speaking about it anymore. You're sounding like a bitter woman. You know, time to move on. No one really wanted to hear about it, or just, well, now you're here, so live life now. And 29 years is a long time. And I had a lot to sort through. One day I was at lunch with a friend, and she said to me, "Have you ever heard of the Men Project?" And I said, "No, I haven't." She began to describe and fill me in on what Men Project was about. And instantly that day when I went home, I looked up the Men Project, and just, there was something that set it apart as far as the equipping that it gave me, listening to Annette. There was just this lack of bitterness, a confidence in the information and the knowledge that she had to describe these type of abusive relationships and what they look like, and her story, and how important it was for me to hear her story and others' testimonies that I found on the site. And then most importantly were the definitions. Reading these short definitions to apply to everything I had lived through for so many years. And as much as one year grew into another and there was a shift in what I was experiencing, whether it was gaslighting or minimizing or blame shifting, I didn't have those terms with me to attach to what I had experienced. So I had stories that were exhausting, and sometimes I didn't want to bring them up. And I would meet with other women and we would compare stories, and I would go home exhausted and wondering if anything was really helpful. And with the Men Project, we were able to pull away from our names and stories and talk about behavior and put definition on it and take away that constant inner doubt that it still was my fault or he still deserved it. And to identify it for what it is. And it just set me free further, and it launched me into the ability to help other people that have been through vastly different or similar abusive relationships. And they didn't have to look like mine anymore for us to be able to discuss them and to point to the training and the information and that community that MEND has offered has been life-changing.
Well, we love Sandy. Isn't she amazing? Yeah. Her story is complex and beautiful, and we're so grateful for her involvement with the MEND and her friendship. Through the healing and equipping she's received, Sandy's helping many others, as well as connecting us with them to train them. And Sandy mentions several times the terms and definitions. That is one of our tools that takes the pressure off the victim to have to describe these complicated experiences through storytelling, the minutia that storytelling requires. And it just focuses on the abuser's behavioral patterns, those abusive patterns that are so hard to identify and describe. And so we make it so much easier on them. And honestly, we've all on their team experienced a light bulb go on where finally they have language and finally they have validation. And it really then sets them on a path to know what next steps they might need to take. And we don't influence those steps because it's a very personal decision, but we support them on their journey. So now we'd like for you to hear from Jennifer, one of our volunteer advisory board members. The MEND Project has a panel of advisory board members who come from a variety of different backgrounds to provide feedback and domestic violence expertise from their unique vantage points. For example, attorneys or BV clinicians and so forth. So let's take a look at Jennifer's video.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Khalifa. I'm one of the MEND Project's volunteer advisors. I want to share with you all why it is that I love MEND. Currently, I am the Director of Prevention for our State Domestic Violence Coalition. I also am a part-time lecturer at Cal State Fullerton, and I teach the Intimate Partner Violence class. And prior to that, I was the Prevention Education Manager for Laura's House, which is one of the largest domestic violence agencies here in Orange County. I met the team at MEND about 3 years ago, and I was really impressed with their work. So what I learned about MEND is that they are providing training to first responders, to anyone who is intended to show up for people who are experiencing psychological abuse or domestic violence. And they are training them and equipping them with the tools that they need and the education that they need so that they can show up for these folks in a way that is trauma informed. When I learned about MEND and the work that they were doing, I had an aha moment, just realizing that this is really the missing link between the continuum of service and care that we do need to provide for our victims of abuse. Their training and their curriculum is really unique among other nonprofits, and that their main focus is training these first responders, anyone who is charged with showing up for folks in a time of crisis, or anyone who is showing up to provide direct counsel. They're giving them, as I mentioned, the training and the tools and the resources so that these individuals can bring healing and validation to their victims. It is helping responders to be able to interface with folks without causing additional harm. We know that sometimes that might be unintentional, but we want to make sure that safety is key when it comes to individuals who are serving victims and survivors of domestic violence. The MEND Project and their training enables responders to be able to lead victims on their own path of healing, and getting them to the right services and resources more quicker than before. I have reviewed the Men Project's training curriculum, and truly they're doing important and groundbreaking work in the field of intimate partner violence prevention. And I hope that you will continue to support them in doing this very important work. I also want to give a big thank you to Annette and to her vision and to the way that the Men Project and their team puts this work forward and the way that they are supporting victims of violence within our communities.
Thank you to Jennifer. What Jennifer describes about MEND is one of the characteristics that makes MEND unique among nonprofits within the field of intimate partner violence. When responders use MEND's models, victims feel seen, validated, and in turn empowered to take the next steps on their path of healing. Most frontline responders are not trained or equipped to identify when psychological abuse is present, so they miss the cues and inadvertently doubly abuse victims who are seeking clarity and cause significant harm. And so we're actually reaching out to that middle person, the person that victims turn to first. And statistics show that they often turn to their faith leaders or their therapists. And it might seem shocking, but therapists are not trained on psychological abuse through their academic studies. It's only if they take continuing education units. And faith-based leaders are in the same situation. So they often respond in ways that are really harmful. For example, putting the institution of marriage above the well-being of the victim and children inside the marriage, and just not identifying it so that the victim stays confused in couples counseling and so forth. So I wanted you just to be aware of what Jennifer was saying. Our team wanted to share with you what from this past year they are most proud of in terms of the impact they see in our organization makes. So now I'd like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Stephanie Byerly.
Hi there. Thanks, Annette. I could talk forever about things that I'm proud of. But I wanted to share a story that really illustrates one of the various ways that you can be a partner with men. I want to share a story about one of our very first volunteer advisors way early on in our organization. Her name is Mary Ann, and she did so many things for us. But one thing that she did is she introduced us to a family resource center, which is located in downtown Manhattan, that serves hundreds of clients every week or every month in New York City. And she referred them to us to get trained. She thought it would help them to be able to identify psychological abuse and to learn how to use our tools and resources well. So in time, we were able to train their staff and their volunteer leaders and on how to use the tools, how to use the terms and definitions, the best way to respond if they noticed that someone might be experiencing psychological abuse in their relationship. And mind you, this isn't a domestic violence clinic. It's a nonprofit organization that works with families for a variety of reasons. And so through our training, they learned all of that and began implementing the tools with the clients that they serve. But in addition to that, every month, their leader, who we work closely with, would send our blogs to all of her staff and her volunteer leaders. She would send copies of the recordings for our intensives. And so they continued to be trained over time to go deeper in their understanding of the critical issues that many of their clients face. But still, after a few years of doing that, they recognized the immense value to their clients who are victims of abuse or survivors, or even those who are in high conflict relationships that might not realize they're in an abusive relationship, that it was critical for them to get the deeper learning in a safe space by attending a survivor training that MEND offers. So they reached out to us, and as a gift to their clients, they're going to be hosting a special training that MEND's going to provide for those who find themselves in those difficult relationships. So we're really excited because we get to do that coming up in January or February this new year. But this really illustrates how one person like Mary Ann can make a huge impact on hundreds and how it continues to grow over time. So that's the one story I wanted to share that I thought was really cool.
Thank you, Stephanie. Now I'd like you to hear from Jill Rice.
Hi there. So one of my favorite things that we do here at MEND is our 1-hour training intensives. anyone invited to join us each month. It's at no cost. So we take a deeper dive into various topics related to abuse. And over this year, we saw a noticeable increase in attendance and engagement during the intensives, and it's been very exciting. So there's a couple that stand out to me. We did one on PTSD and CPTSD, and we had so much engagement. It was so positive. And then more recently, we had an intensive on the top red flags for dealing with a narcissist. And that engagement time alone during the Q&A, that was around 30 minutes or more. So participants were really relating so much to what Annette was speaking about, that both men and women were asking questions from a partner perspective. We had parents asking various types of questions in relation to their children. And we had licensed clinicians sharing their stories of experience with clients as well and asking their questions. So we have had all of them in the same place, learning and engaging together. And even though it's anonymous, it's so beautiful and affirming to see them all coming together from their different perspectives. So speaking of engagement, one other item that really stood out to me this year is when we rolled out our curriculum, we knew it was meeting a need that just wasn't being met. And so we made this course available to anyone who wants to participate. And we do that by providing scholarships to a high percentage of those attendees. So what really stood out to me was their need for the material was so evident. In most, in all of the survivor cohorts we held, but in that most recent one we held, that deep level of participation exemplified just how much this material is resonating with them and where they hadn't been able to find that information somewhere else. So it gave them that clarity that they were so needing. As the course went along each week, we noticed that this particular cohort was really engaging this material and desired to connect with Annette more deeply about their questions. So Annette and I adjusted and stayed on longer than needed, just to help meet their need, to help see them where they're at. And we really got to know our group and interact with them right where they were at. And while we provided what they needed, they provided us with full and encouraged hearts to know that we were delivering the curriculum content in a really meaningful and impactful way. So the engagement and those personal connections are so special, especially as we're taking on these challenging topics around this difficult issue of abuse.
Thank you, Jill. Now, I would love for you to hear from Lauren, Lauren Hatch, our social media guru.
Hi, everybody. So over the last 2 years since the beginning of the pandemic, MEND took on the challenge of transitioning ourselves from an organization that really worked day to day, in person, training in person, communicating in person, to an organization that was reaching out through online sources, through social media, through our website. And the growth that we have had and the reach that has come as a part of that has been absolutely astounding. To give you a little sense, you heard a little bit from Annette earlier, but to give you an even better sense of this, we are actually in every single continent on the planet, including Antarctica. I couldn't believe it. I had to double check it 3 times. We have made it into 144 countries. Every state in the United States has at least one person reaching out to the MEND Project through social media and through our website. And on average, people are staying on our website for anywhere from 30 minutes and longer. They are delving so deeply and reaching out so much. But here's the thing, because we are an organization that was focused on personal contact, we've never let that go. In fact, as we've gone online, we have done everything we possibly can to make us as reachable as we possibly can. And because of that, we have stories like this one. Actually, a young woman from Australia who, I'm going to call her Sarah for anonymity's sake. She knows we're sharing her story, but would like to remain anonymous. Her name is Sarah, and she has been through the ringer, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, and physical, and a very big case of double abuse. For years, this woman has searched up, down, and sideways to find answers. And this year, she found us through a Google search. and ended up on our Instagram page and sent us a message going, I can't believe it. Nobody's ever believed me. I haven't had words for this. Everybody's thought I was crazy. And she came back to us, and over and over and over again, she came to our website, she sent us emails, and then she took that information and she took it to her counselor. And for the first time, she felt like somebody actually heard her. She actually had a way to tell people not only what she'd been through and put words and definitions to it, but she also had a way to actually be believed, that she wasn't making this up, that this was a very real thing that so many encountered. And in fact, it doesn't matter where on the globe you are or where, what culture you're a part of. Emotional abuse, double abuse, domestic violence, unfortunately and sadly, is a very real thing. And we are now getting to see a very real impact from all of these men and women, not just Sarah, but so many others who reach out to us and send us messages and send us emails and send us DMs that say, oh my gosh, for the first time. And it's all become possible because of the growth and the outreach that we've done in the online sphere. It's astounding to see the growth of the MEND Project through that forum.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I wanted to just talk briefly about an accomplishment that we achieved this year. We finally are able to offer continuing education units to licensed counselors. It's the American Psychological Association that recognized our work and allowed us to offer continuing education units, which is an incentive for more therapists and social workers, et cetera, to participate in our training. And we just feel so validated by the fact that the curriculum that we worked so hard on for years has achieved this goal. And now we will be able to reach so many more victims and survivors because each therapist has a large client base. And so many of them have reported back to us that they're finally able to serve victims of identify emotional abuse when it's present in couples counseling and properly separate the couple in counseling sessions, and to respond in trauma-informed ways and to validate victims for their experience, to align with them and stand with them, where otherwise the abuser was just making therapy so confusing and really undermining the victim's ability to receive validation. And finally, I want to say that our course offers 9.5 continuing education units, which is a huge amount. And so they receive a lot from attending our course. And I'm just so proud that all of our content was recognized in this way. Okay, Stephanie.
Hi, me again. I'm going to do my best to do this without my readers. But I wanted to share with you right now just some of the various ways that financial gifts are used by the MEND Project. But in order to really respect your time, we're going to be brief about these. Some of you, however, might want to go a little bit deeper. And Annette and I wanted to reach out and just say, we're happy to meet with you by phone, Zoom, in person if you're local, to talk more, share what our budget looks like, how funds are used to do the work that we do. There's all kinds of ways that we can express it, but we want to hear from your heart what's most important to you and show you the ways that we are using those funds that really honor what your investment goals are. So first, also, if you do want to meet with us, you can email me, Stephanie@themendproject.com, and my information will be shown at the end of the presentation. So okay, so the first one, this bring hope to victims of abuse in their time of greatest need. I think it's pretty much clear from all the stories that you've heard that the trajectory of a victim's life can be vastly changed by immersing them into men's materials and engaging in any of our trainings, let alone when they walk alongside us. Just know that most of the victims that come to us are also victims of financial abuse and have absolutely no resources, barely have the resources to advocate for themselves in court or protect their children, and they really depend on scholarships in order to take advantage of the trainings that we offer. So for just $99, you can sponsor a victim. And I want you to remember that just by sponsoring one person, by helping one person, you can impact hundreds of others. Many of our survivors who take our training eventually come back to us when they're ready and desire to help us help them advocate for other people in their sphere of influence. Okay, next slide. Lauren, thank you. So respond to crisis calls with resource referrals and next steps. Well, as you already heard, many people reach out to our team for help. We walk alongside them, support them through training and education and personally, and we connect them to key resources. Along the way that we have just learned that there are some exciting ways that we can increase the services we provide to survivors, which we believe will help them in their healing journey. We're so excited about the ideas that we have to supplement the existing resources with new tools, which are going to help them to overcome their trauma and understand what healthy relationships should look and feel like. In addition to that, we do get regular requests for hard copies of our materials that we currently have on the website, but a lot of organizations just have them available for people to use when they come in. And so we want to be able to supply those for free and across, a greater area. Okay, next slide, Lauren. Come alongside community service providers to help them make the greatest impact on all who are affected by intimate partner violence. We split this up in a couple of different ways. One is a donation if you would like to sponsor a training for a whole organization. And the other is in just helping us with our outreach. You saw how important this is from the story I shared about the Family Resource Center in Manhattan, who's making an impact on hundreds that they see each month, as well as the survivors who are going to be engaging with the Men Project for deeper healing through our training. The best way that we can make a difference on the largest number of survivors is by training the organizations who directly serve them in the communities within which they live. As Jennifer shared in her video, these organizations are on the front lines. They serve members of the community with the greatest need, and often well before the individual even realizes or has the clarity to understand that they're experiencing a form of domestic violence. So the more the responder knows and understands how to recognize relationship violence, the better equipped they can be to help their clients right then and there, but also to refer them to the proper resources and the specialized resources, which is going to help them to navigate their next steps. But in order for these organizations to learn about how MEND can help them serve their communities more effectively, we really need to increase MEND's outreach. I want to go back for a second and just say we are grateful for the ways that COVID influenced our organization to move from in-person training to virtual training, because by doing so, we've been able to impact, well, as Lauren said, people across the globe, but we've been able to impact more people than we could by continuing to do in-person trainings. But what that meant was that there are so many organizations, many who have nothing to do with intimate partner violence, but the products that are out there that offer free training, there's so many of them. So it makes it kind of competitive to get us before the people who need our help the most. So with your support, we hope to get the attention of those who need our help and be able to do trainings for them. So that's where your support can be most helpful to us right now.
Can I just add one little
Of
thing to
course
what
you
you're
can,
saying?
always.
So when Stephanie talks about that, it's really competitive out there. She's not saying that we don't really have competition with our materials. They're unique
Right.
and groundbreaking, but there's just so many classes being offered online that we're just competing with for people's attention. And so I think I just
Yeah,
wanted to
no,
add
I'm
that.
glad you did that. You know, people are exhausted with the amount of information that they're receiving. And so that means that it takes more creative approaches in order to get their attention on the things that they're going to want to hear about. I'm glad you did that. Okay, so the next slide, can you move it down a little bit, please? No, I can't read the slide, sorry. Increase outreach to survivors and responders through enhanced accessibility to our courses, training platforms, and website. Gosh, as both Jill and Lauren shared, more and more people are accessing the training and educational tools that we provide. And we serve diverse audiences who require different training focuses and formats. So therapists, faith leaders, survivors and victims, which we've talked a lot about, educators, various types of nonprofits. But to meet the super unique needs that they have with the optimal efficiency and professionalism, we really need to expand the education and resources on our website and then enhance our technological infrastructure in order to be able to handle it. We hope to provide, for example, private portals for different types of organizations and educational homes with resources for various audience groups, therapists, different than faith-based organizations. This will help to accommodate the needs that we are seeing time and again for our materials. Now, this is a really big job that's going to take a little bit of time to develop what we have in mind. But it's an amazing opportunity for us to accomplish and serve greater numbers of victims and survivors, as well as the responders who serve them, in a way that it makes it easier for them to access the materials that we have.
Thank you. I wanted to just add that a lot of the people that we reach through training are nonprofit organizations that serve marginalized communities, and they often don't have the budget to pay for training. And we sponsor them with various scholarships, and we need to charge for training because it's very work intensive, and there's a lot of costs involved with from a technological standpoint and so forth. So I just wanted you to know that a large number of who we reach are those nonprofit organizations that serve the most who are in need. I know we've said that before, but I just wanted to emphasize it again. Stephanie?
Okay, I'm going to go back to being brief. Stop relationship violence before it begins by teaching youth how to detect and stop emotional abuse early on. As you can tell, we are just excited about all of the opportunities we have. And what I love about our team is how we continually learn in every training we do, from the feedback we get, from every request that we get on our info account and throughout. We learn the various ways that we can be making an even greater impact on the people that we serve. So this project has been near and dear to our hearts for quite a while, and we're excited to develop our youth program in this next year. We've come to realize that the education tools and resources we share do more than help the people who are currently in crisis. They are successful at preventing people from entering or staying in abusive relationships. So by focusing on prevention efforts at the earliest age possible, we can help reduce the high numbers of incidents of teen relationship violence and violence that moves into adult years. We are going to be working with interns and others to develop specially designed youth-sensitive tools and resources, as well as a curriculum aimed at equipping youth service providers and educators to teach kids about emotional abuse, to empower teens to use their voice, and set boundaries to protect them from harmful relationships. We really hope that you will join us through your investment for this great project we're super excited about. Okay, next slide, Lauren. Okay, take a screenshot of the slide or put your camera up to use the QR code to get you access to our financial page, where you can learn more about various ways that you can give. Also, there's various ways you can give. You can text to give. Right now, you can type the words "We Mend," WEMEND, to 44321. or you can access the QR code, as I mentioned. You could do a small monthly gift. $10 or more is going to impact many survivors, as well as the long-term impact that that's going to have on many other people. You can make a one-time gift of any amount, and no gift is too small, and nor is any gift too big. If your company matches charitable contributions, please let us know at either our info account or at my email, stephanie@themenproject.com, and we can get you the IRS letters and forms and receipts in order to give that to your company to make sure that the match happens by the end of the year. We just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for any way that you are considering partnering with MEND by referrals or making a donation, or in any ways, telling friends, forwarding our blogs, all the things that we talked about. I did want to share about one of my favorite all the donations are my favorite, by the way, because that's my job. But one of my favorite donations is by someone who serves some of the poorest in New York City, and people who come from very intense backgrounds, gives a $25 donation once a year, and is a pastor who works for, a very low socioeconomic base of people, and I'm sure doesn't make a huge salary, but every year sows seeds into what the MEND Project does by a $25 donation. And I cry every time I get the donation, because I know it's a big sacrifice, but it's also a testimony to what we do and the impact that we can have, and how important it is to those people who are on the front lines helping people in all walks of life with what they're doing. Abuse is so rampant that it doesn't matter what you do. You could be in any socioeconomic area. You can be working with any group of people. Odds are over 50% of them are battling this very destructive issue that we have in our society. And we're super excited for how you're going to come alongside us to help us combat that.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, by the way.
You're welcome.
Now we'd like to take a moment to answer any questions that you may have. You can put them in the chat box, and Lauren will share them with our team. Lauren, do we have any questions?
So we had a couple come in privately, and then also if you want to send them privately, feel free. You can send them to myself, Lauren Hatch, and I will just read them anonymously if you prefer that way. But we do have a couple questions here. From this year, what is the greatest lesson you all have learned in 2022?
Oh boy.
I know it's a zinger. Start off with.
It's a zinger.
The greatest lesson. Gosh, we learned so many lessons. We
Holy moly.
try to, like, for example, when we do our trainings, we always we request evaluations, and we take those evaluations very seriously. We go over them as a team, and we discuss ways that maybe we should refine something, or it just might give us a perspective that we hadn't been aware of for us to incorporate. So I feel like we're always learning, because we're really open-hearted about receiving feedback. We seek feedback. Gosh, I'm kind of stumped. How about you, Stephanie?
Oh, I thought of a million, but if we have an hour, what I have learned this year, a number of things. One, life happens, and I'm just so incredibly privileged to be with a team of people who mirror the type of compassion and help that we want to provide other people. We support each other as a team beautifully, and that trickles down. We walk alongside many people. So life happens, and it can be difficult, and we just need to step in and be okay with messy sometimes, and just be there with people and love people well. And that's just been growing over time. The other thing that I learned is that I become very numbers focused because I'm doing the grant writing and all of the things, and I want to be fixated on, well, we've got to, do these numbers here and these numbers there. But what we learned so much this year is we're restructuring certain things people learn differently, and groups need what we have to offer in different formats, and that's great. So by maintaining flexibility, which I think our team does very well at, is maintaining flexibility. I just feel like there's a new horizon that has opened up to what we can do that's very exciting. And we have so many great plans for this next year, the different ways that we're going to be offering training to meet the needs of all of the groups that seek our help all the time. And so by remaining flexible and keeping our eyes open, the entire view has changed, and it's beautiful. So I'm super excited about what's coming.
Lauren, is there another question?
Yes. Are you seeing a huge increase since the pandemic?
Sorry, Lauren, let me just ask
Mhm.
if Jill has anything she'd like to add to that last question.
Sure, I'll definitely say something that came to mind for me is we're really intentional when we do our intensives. That was what I was speaking about earlier. And part of that is really digging in and doing research and really just learning, even though we know so much, we are all learners. And so as we're formulating what we want to share, and every topic we pick, we can talk about for hours. And so we really are learning how to take that relevant information as we're even diving in deeper and listening to podcasts. I know Annette has a number of them she loves to listen to, and just staying up to date on, what's happening and how this field is even expanding and reaching, and who's impacted. We're all learning as we're coming alongside and educating and equipping. And so I just feel for me, as in working on all of that and doing a deep dive with Annette and discussing all of that and facilitating those intensives, we're all learning a lot, not just about the information, but then applying it and what we choose to. And I love that we're honing in and we're refining, and it's just been a really neat experience for me this year. Yeah.
So just to give you a little insight, if you didn't pick up on it, our intensives are something free, a free live Zoom, or it's stored on Facebook and YouTube, where we take a deeper dive on a particular topic that we're not able to go deep into our curriculum. And so we get requests from people. Can you describe trauma bonding? Can you describe post-traumatic stress and complex post-traumatic stress, various topics? And so we just do a lot of research and focus on that one topic and deliver a talk on it, where we take questions and answers and so forth. So Lauren, any other questions?
Yes. Are you seeing a huge increase since the pandemic, especially interested in young people's mental health with emotional abuse?
God, that's a good question. Yes, we saw a huge increase during the pandemic. People in closed environments with each other, where normally they would have some reprieve because their abuser would go to work for the day. And there is, I'm happy to say, a new focus on mental health. What I'm not seeing that I'd like to see more of is an understanding of how emotional abuse can impact mental health. I mean, when you get post-traumatic stress, which is very common for victims to have, or complex post-traumatic stress, a much more difficult form of trauma to heal from, but it's so common in victims and survivors. It affects your anxiety, there's suicidal ideation, there's depression, and so many other ways. Physiologically, the compromise to their immune system brings on physical illnesses and all kinds of consequences from post-traumatic stress. So yes, we're seeing more awareness, and I'm encouraged by that because I think that they will be more responsive to understanding how emotional abuse contributes to that. But I just would like to see more people aware. I would like to see domestic violence not be a taboo topic, something that is openly discussed, that emotional abuse can be openly discussed, and that our children, our adults and children can learn the language to describe these behaviors so that they understand what a healthy relationship should look and feel like. And I think that will make a big impact on mental health.
I would love to add to
Yeah.
that too. I'm really focusing on youth and teens. There is so much focus on the issues of mental health that many are dealing with right now. I don't think there's enough conversation about how much they are encountering relationship violence at such young ages. In fact, we recently were adding some educational materials for a junior college that we do training for, and we were updating statistics on how much college age students deal with relationship violence. And I was actually surprised by the high numbers. There's such high numbers of those, but it wasn't just that was informative to me. It was the number of those that are already coming into college with trauma that's resulted from intimate relationship violence. That's in friendships, bullying, dating violence,
Parental abuse.
They're coming into college trauma. The numbers are so high, it's surprising. And we aren't teaching these kids about psychological abuse and how to define those terms and how to set up a healthy boundary against it. And it's why we're so passionate about this youth program that we want to help to develop. And so, yeah, we're seeing the increase, but I want to see so much more in informing and equipping these kids, because we're so focused on mental health, but we're not really looking at some of the causes yet. And it's not just internet.
Yeah.
There's so much more that's happening that these kids are not equipped to deal with.
Yeah, and we did a training a couple of years ago for 6th grade students, and they responded so well to the information. Their heads were just nodding, like they really, it surprised me how well they were able to comprehend the material and relate to it. So I'm really excited for this coming year. So Lauren, is there anything else?
Yes, we have quite a few questions. I wanting to be respectful of everybody's time because we're starting to get towards the hour. So I'm assuming we're all okay to stay. We'll answer these questions, but
If you need to hop off, feel free to hop off.
yeah,
we'll see the
we
recording.
are recording this and we will share it afterwards. So if you'd like to see the rest of the questions, we will answer them then if you have to hop off. That being said, is MEND involved in any way to help court systems understand this devastating form of abuse?
Oh boy, that's a loaded one.
That's a loaded question.
Yes.
That's a
We
good way of
would-
saying it.
We would really like to. It's there's such a great need because there are such ignorance and prejudices that are against victims, where they just some judges do understand coercive control and covert emotional abuse. And so they take it into consideration, but it's not system-wide. In fact, system-wide, victims are so harmed in the court process. Oftentimes the abuser gets custody of the kids, and it's so common. So we actually partner with organizations that come alongside victims in court, but we would really like to step into training opportunities for judges and lawyers, and that's just something that we haven't had the time to focus on, but it's something that we discuss frequently. Yeah, thank you for the question.
You know me, that's a really big issue. And as a former litigator, it's dear to my heart because I recognize the challenge that attorneys have in those situations when judges might not understand. And so it's hard to, represent your client on something that the courts aren't going to totally understand. So there's a lot of work in this area that needs to be done, and it's a different amounts of work is in different counties. So it's not the same everywhere. It's not treated the same everywhere. So there's a lot to be done. And at some point, we hope that we can be helpful towards resolving that issue.
Lauren?
Yes. Do you have any resources that can help rehabilitating abusers understand abuse they've caused and how how they can change?
Yes, so part of our curriculum provides tools for how to interface with an abusive person, so that you understand your role, which is unique. We call it our accountability model of courage, because frankly, it takes a lot of courage to interface with somebody who's manipulative, confusing, undermining, justifying, not taking responsibility for their actions. And so we have a specific outline of how to engage with them without undermining the victim, because the abuser is constantly trying to undermine the victim to give themselves credibility at the victim's expense. And so it's a confusing process, but we outline that really well. And then we refer abusers. We have a resource that we refer to for therapy, where it's actually the president of this psychological organization that offers this kind of help actually is the co-leader of the continuing education unit class that we teach for the American Psychological Association. And so he's an expert at this. He has a high success rate for those who are serious about doing the work. If they're just going there to check the box, okay, I went to counseling. My wife wanted me to go to counseling. I went to counseling. That's not going to work. It takes a lot of reading. It takes a lot of engagement. And so there are positive outcomes, but it takes a long time. And from my own personal story, I can tell you that my husband, everything I read said it takes a long time. And it took a couple of years for me to really recognize change. And we were separated during that time, but it doesn't come easy. It's completely changing your worldview. You look at relationships one way with what we call the pillars of abuse, a faulty belief system. So that might encompass patriarchy, entitlement. They have this strong sense of entitlement where they believe that they deserve, double standards, where they can be treated better, and image management, where they really care about how the public perceives them, but they act different behind closed doors. And so these things take a long time to unpack. And that's why it takes a while, but we do partner, and we feel that we have excellent partners in this area. Lauren?
All right. One last question. Does MEND offer any advocate support for individuals experiencing abuse, such as encouragement with documenting CPTSD, strengthening their mental outlook, etc.?
Can you read that question?
Does MEND offer any advocate support for individuals? So do we have advocate support experiencing abuse, such as encouragement with documenting CPTSD, strengthening their mental outlook, etc.?
So one limitation that we have is that we're not psychologists. And so we can't be that psychologist person who provides therapy and then can document CPTSD. But we refer them to therapists who are trained, who can offer that type of service. And that's really a lot of what we do is we partner with people who can really support them, and we vet them. So yeah, that's how it works. Is that it, Lauren?
Yes, just
Okay.
adding on to that, part of the reason why we want to build out more partnerships and more resources for victims that come to us in crisis is because of this. We don't have internal therapists and counselors. We train those therapists and counselors. So what we do is we create those partnerships, but that's part of the reason why one of the things we're building on in 2023 is giving you even more resources and more availability for those victims that come to us in crisis, knowing that we don't have them in-house, but we will create those partnerships so they are there.
One thing I want to add to all of that is that I talk to a lot of people who are going through court battles and frustrations with people not understanding how PTSD affects their ability to respond as a client in a lawsuit, or all the things that go along with it. And I would just want to encourage people we're having more opportunities for people to take, different types of courses that they can do on their own, trying to build upon that even more and more. And I would encourage them to take our courses. It's very illuminating to understanding, it's changed my life. And when I walk alongside people and understanding why it's so hard for them to put pen to paper when they're going through a traumatic situation. So there's a lot of ways that we can help the various professionals that are out there without us personally advocating. And that's by bringing them in and having them get trained.
But we do teach advocates through domestic violence shelters. We're often invited to teach a portion of the 40-hour course. So we build relationships with advocates, and we're really picky about vetting our therapists. We really like them to be trained or to demonstrate their knowledge in another meaningful way, because there's so many stories where victims have been harmed, doubly abused by their own therapists, not understanding, minimizing their story, even blame shifting and asking what they did to cause their spouse to respond in this way. But abuse is a choice. It's not an accident, and it's never the victim's fault. And so there's these, we're really picky about wanting to make sure that therapists are going to serve them well. So all of our partnerships are things that we take a long time vetting and really collaborating with. So I hope that answers your questions. I wanted to raise a glass and say thank you so much for joining us today. And if you know of someone that wasn't able to make it today, I hope you'll refer them to this recording because I think it's enlightening and really gives a background view of the work that we do. I want to express on behalf of our entire team how grateful we are to have your partnership. And I wish you, we all wish you a happy holiday season. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. We got a toast. Cheers. Nothing better than the clink.
Take good care.